All right, so this is a pretty sick study here. It says remote employees work longer and harder, studies show. So, pretty fascinating stuff here. Remember, the corporations are all trying to get workers back in person. They're trying to be like, come back, come back. Because of COVID 19, as a result of this essential forcing of people to work from home, I think a lot of people and even companies realize that, oh, smokes, a lot of people can actually just work from home in general. And so the worry is, oh, well, if they're at home working, they must just be slacking off and, playing video games, like masturbating, just like doing whatever, right? But it's very important to get the empirical data here because we have seen, there was already another study, I believe, that had said that remote employees work longer and harder. So it's completely bogus. It's pretty interesting, actually. We should read into this, though. One interesting thing I saw was like that corporate buildings are actually losing value now because people are moving away from being close. So like that's actually one of the interesting things about property when you think about it is like property itself, its value isn't really derived from the property, but actually the stuff around it. Like, isn't that kind of interesting to think about? It's like the same property somewhere else has more value. And so you could argue for like a land value tax, right? Because it provides a disincentive to even do anything to the building, right? Like, why do anything to the building if the value of the property comes from the things around it and not it itself? It's pretty interesting. So you could put you could value the land beneath the building. Instead of valuing the building, you could value the land itself. And you could do like a land value tax or a property tax. But anyways, sorry. It says remote work became possible long before the pandemic. Many employers resisted it on a hunch that employees working from home might spend too much of their workday watching Oprah and shopping on eBay. Then came COVID 19, which launched a vast forced experiment in telework. The results are in. As it turns out, most remote workers are not incurable slackers. Several studies suggest remote and hybrid employees actually work slightly longer hours than their office bound colleagues. Findings echoed by an avalanche of anecdotal evidence gathered from millions of teleworkers in the past 3 years. One of the most celebrated studies, which tracked more than 60,000 Microsoft employees over the first half of 2020, found that remote work triggered a 10% boost in weekly hours. Wow, that's a big deal. Remote employees are working more in part because they're commuting less. Interesting. Another landmark study based on data from 27 countries found that remote workers save 72 minutes in daily commuting time. That's a lot. That's an entire hour every day. That's an extra, like 8 hours or 5 hours a week. On average, employees spend about half an hour of that extra time engaged in daily work, more than 2 hours a week. Not only do remote workers log longer hours, but they also seem to get work done at a faster clip. Wow, I'm surprised they said that. An off-cited pre-pandemic study of workers in a Chinese travel agency found a 13% boost in performance from home workers. They worked more hours per shift and each hour was a bit more productive. The success of America's remote work experiment may have been a self-fulfilling prophecy. In the early pandemic months, some remote workers felt imprisoned in their homes. In hindsight, however, the ennui, I've never seen that word before, was probably more about the pandemic itself than remote work, which has proven wildly popular. Gallup polling shows a dramatic rise in the share of Americans who prefer to work at home at least part of the time, from 40% in 2019 to a near unanimous 94% in 2022. Damn. So there's some more stuff in here, but I'm not going to read all of this stuff. Saying full-time workers logged 42 hours a week in 2022 compared to 42.5 in pre-pandemic 2019. So what we can see basically is that all of these studies are all showing that not only do remote employees work longer, they also work more productive. Because to be honest with you, longer hours are effectively useless. Like, they don't really mean that much. Like, longer hours don't really mean that much. What we care about is productivity. How much do you produce, right? And so you can produce the same or more amount of work in less than the amount of hours you're working. It's not the same, right? And so that's why we advocate for a 4-day work week, is because actually what you see is the productivity levels are the same or higher from 8 hours less per week. And it's because people come back more recharged and more powerful. And so each marginal unit of labor is not going to yield the same amount of productivity. And so the marginal productivity of labor is going to go down each each marginal unit of labor that's incurred, right? So we actually don't even care all that much. But the non-commuting thing. And so I think this kind of becomes sort of for corporations. I think it's a control thing. I think they just want to control their employees. I think employees have more freedom when they work from home, whereas when they're in the office, you're kind of in that, even if the office is really nice, you're in sort of that box of, hey, I'm at the office, my corporation's office, and they kind of get to control you and that kind of thing. And so I think remote work allows people to be in a comfortable environment. I personally have noticed in university, like, obviously everything went online, right, for school, for classes. And still, even since obviously things are back in person now, there's a much higher increase in classes that are now online that will stay online for the foreseeable future. In fact, the calculus class I took, calculus 1 and 2, where they offered a hybrid where it was basically all online with just videos, and then there was like an active learning session one of the days. But that's not a lecture though, that's just a work session. So it is just kind of crazy. And for me personally, I work much better just from learning at home. I don't even like lectures, like in-person lectures. I don't even like them. I like watching YouTube videos while I can have Fresh Prince of Bel-Air playing in the background, or I can do some watching while I'm eating food, like chilling on my couch or whatever. Most people don't do well in that environment, but I think that's just because people aren't, fully used to it yet. But I think remote work allows this opportunity for people to be, with their family, closer to home. You don't have to be in some metropolitan area. And the studies show that this is actually more beneficial. The only downside to remote work is going to be because of the way our society is built. I think most adults' social life comes from their work, their coworkers, hanging out with their coworkers. That's where they make their friends. That's where they have their daily gossip, whatever, that stuff. That is going to be a downside. However, I don't think that's a downside where it's like, oh yeah, like, well, we need to stop remote work. That's obviously not the solution to the problem. The solution is, let's figure out ways to be more social in ways that don't require the sociability to be under the confines of working for a corporation, right? That's obviously the solution. Let's figure that out. Not the solution isn't, oh, well, let's go back to in-person work. That's not how that works, or that's not how it should anyways, the thought process wise. So this is a huge benefit. It gives a lot more flexibility, and if it can be done through remote work and the employee wants to work remotely, you should allow them to work remotely. It doesn't make any sense. It's like some kind of, again, it's all control. That's the only way to explain it, because if the supposed, folklore tale of, oh, they're going to be watching Oprah or Ellen and eating donuts and not working is empirically false. It's empirically false. There's no reason to say it, right? Except for your hate and bigotry towards workers of all slackers. You know what I mean? So this is really, really cool to see, really, really exciting. It's going to allow lots and lots of freedom and flexibility for people, hopefully. And even, you can even see it in university now, where there's way more online classes offered now than there were before, and that's not going to go back. Now, for the calculus classes, at my university at least, they did cancel the hybrids, because I guess people were doing worse in the hybrid classes than they were in the in-persons. So I think students haven't fully made that pivot towards online learning yet. But in the future, they definitely will. I think in-person university is going to be it's going to be for the most part dead, like at least 50% cut, like in the next 20 years, as people start to get better at just learning from YouTube, because there's just so much content, especially for something like calculus. There's just so much content, like everywhere, you know what I mean? And so it'll be pretty interesting to see how that goes as well.